Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Friday, September 29th, 2023. I'm your host, George Kerth, joined by the one and only Cody Roadcap. Cody, how you feeling heading into week 4?
I will be, my mood will be a lot better in 3.5 hours or a lot worse. Just a reminder, record this on Thursday night, right before Thursday Night Football. Packer is about to play. So if I'm talking fast, you know why.
He's trying to get us out of here as quick as possible. I'm going to have to slow us down here today. As a reminder, our main episode for the week is going to be every single Friday. Cody also does a bonus episode recapping our 30-man fantasy league, the Couch GMs World Cup, earlier in the week, Tuesdays or Wednesdays typically. So make sure you go check that out as well. You can follow us on our social medias at the Couch GMs everywhere: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. And you can always send us a DM or a comment or whatever to get some fantasy advice or ask your fantasy questions every single week. We typically start with news, not a whole lot to talk about in news specifically. So why don't we start on a little bit of a light note? Sit back, relax, and let's chat. All right, Cody, I think we just wanted to talk a couple of storylines from week 3. And I'll start off with, what the heck did the Miami Dolphins do? Dropping 70, not 50, not 60, 70 points, the highest score in over 50 years of NFL football, and the second highest score ever. I believe the highest was 73, and then they tied with a couple other teams at 70. I thought I was watching Tyler play Madden, personally.
It felt that way, except Tyler didn't run the ball that much. They
You're
did a
right.
lot of work through the ground. I think
Tyreek Hill was about 200 yards short of being Tyler playing Madden.
True. But I think every team got put on notice. If you have the opportunity to interview your former ball boy, you need to. And if you don't, it'll come back to haunt you, because Mike McDaniel, he was irritated. Vic Fangio's on that staff, who the Broncos fired for Nathaniel Hackett last offseason. So that was the definition of a revenge game.
Yeah, normally we don't talk about coach revenge games or ball boy revenge games or whatever it might be. But there was definitely some anger taken out on the Broncos, and the Broncos aren't on the level of the Dolphins anyway. Dolphins, are they currently the best team in the NFL? Are you willing to go that far after 3 weeks?
I don't want to say because they put up 70 points that they're the best team in the NFL. I believe I was the only Couch GM to pick them to win the division.
I
When we
picked them to
did
win the
our
Super Bowl, bro.
you
I didn't pick them
but
to win a division, but I picked them to win a Super Bowl.
okay, I did forget that, but you did not predict them to win the division, so maybe you didn't expect them to explode onto the scene.
No.
But I don't want to discredit the San Francisco 49ers. They're still playing really well. They were the team beat coming in. They still have a lot of talent on the roster. You can't overlook the Chiefs, the reigning Super Bowl champion. We're only in week 3. They still have to do that. But I do think we're starting to already see through 3 weeks these tiers break out up to where each team stands. And if you don't have the Dolphins at the top in that tier 1, you should.
I'm also going to bring up Kempy has been kind of keeping me updated on a preseason bet that he's made. He was putting a bet down on the final team to remain undefeated. And obviously, we're down to 3 teams now: the Dolphins, the 49ers, and the Eagles. 3 of the more likely teams in that scenario, I think the Chiefs and the Bills are probably up there too, but they got knocked out in week 1. Which of those 3 now do you think is going to make it the furthest? I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, so real quick, I know we're going to talk games later. I know the Chiefs have the Jets, so they're definitely moving on this past week. The why did I say the Chargers? The Dolphins, because they probably.
And the Chiefs are already knocked out, so that doesn't matter.
Oh, you're right. You did say them. I'm so sorry. My eye was twitching. I don't know if the people saw on YouTube. I was like, what is going on right now? So if you're listening, make sure you check us out on YouTube, Couch GMs podcast. But the 49ers, they have the Cardinals. That they should take care of business there. The Eagles, they have the Commanders. Commanders played them tough last year in Philly, so that one's possibly. And the Miami Dolphins, why can I not find out who they're playing? Oh, they're playing the Buffalo Bills. So they are probably the most likely to lose this week. But I think all 3 teams survive. And I would have to say, just probably because strength of schedule, I'm going to give it to the 49ers to be the last remaining undefeated team.
I think I'm giving it to the 49ers also still, and I think that is who can be picked as well. Also because if you go far enough, the Eagles and the Dolphins play each other, and I think it's week 8. So if one's left, there's a good chance the one knocks off the other. If they're both left, one of them's not making out of that week, so that helps as well.
Yeah, and I should say too, the 49ers do play the Cowboys next week. I know I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, and they just lost to the Cardinals, which might also be might be even a bigger surprise than the Dolphins putting up 70, if we're being honest. But
Yeah.
if they bounce back on Sunday Night Football, they have the potential to lose to the Cowboys there. So, and where the Eagles get the Rams and the Dolphins get the Giants. So it's going to take, talk about the Dolphins potentially losing this week, but if they win, they get the Giants and then the Panthers. So definitely interested to see how that bet plays out for Kempy.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned the Cowboys. We'll talk about them a little bit more for a second, just because I like talking about the Cowboys torture. Tyler's not here to enjoy this even more. But what happened there? I mean, I have been on the page of the Cardinals are a better team than we gave them credit for coming into the year. I know you kind of disagree, like they don't have much there, but the only thing that really changed majorly, they lost one or two defensive pieces and they lost a quarterback who still may come back at some point this year with Kyler Murray. Um, but I will say they still are overplaying expectations, even my expectations. I thought they were better than like the worst team in the league.
Yeah. So um, I think there's a couple things that go into what happened to the Cowboys in that game. Because they watched Giants come back with them at the very end, it could have been a little bit of a trap game because not that it's a tough matchup, but it is a bigger matchup against the New England Patriots this week for the Cowboys. But I think we're underestimating Jonathan Gannon. Not that I think he's like the world beater head coach, but he was with Philadelphia. He knows the Cowboys as well as anybody in the National Football League after the last couple of years. So I think they had an edge up, and they just came out and played light out. And we've seen in the past sometimes Dak's on a heater, and sometimes he's on a cold streak. And I mean, he didn't play the worst we've ever seen, but he didn't put the team on their back. They struggled to get the ball moving. And the Cardinals, they had a really good game plan. They came and executed. I don't think that really changes my outcome for them. They might not get the number one pick now because the Panthers or the Bears might not win a game at this rate, but the
Yeah.
top 5 pick for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that, but seeing them, if you're going to tell me they have a chance to win 6 games, I could see that too. That might still be a top 5 pick, depending on how, the disparity is this year. There's some years where like every single team has 7, 8, and 9 wins, it seems like. And then the disparity is so bad that a 6-win team is still at the bottom of the pile. But um they're playing a lot better than a lot of people thought, and we'll see how that continues. The Cowboys, I do think trap game is probably a big reason why that happened, and they're not hitting the panic button yet, but we're going to see how they rebound this week. Cody, go ahead and intro this next part. Just I want to give a chance to set up here.
Okay, so it's been a big debate. It's one of the biggest talking points in the NFL, not named Taylor Swift. There is a Kelsey and Swift on this team, though, and they are heavily involved in what I call the tush push. Troy Aikman called the double cheek push. I believe there's a new name, but I think that's what George is teeing up. But the big question is, should it be banned? It's unstoppable. It's only stopped once by the Green Bay Packers, the way on 4th down. But should the tush push play be banned?
First off, I will start with it is now officially called the brotherly shove. That has been a Reddit push for the last about 5 days. Nick Sirianni has now confirmed that the team is on board for calling it the brotherly shove. And the reason for that is because there's only one team that has successfully done this as much as it has been done, the Eagles. So if you're telling me that this should be banned, so you're telling me that the Dolphins can't run deep crossers anymore? Are you telling me that the Chiefs can't use Patrick Mahomes anymore? Like, I feel like it'd be one team being penalized for having a really good interior offensive line and a quarterback that can squat 600 pounds. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. I don't think it should be banned. I'm not on that bandwagon, but I will say I don't think like they would have to ban the QB sneak as a whole,
Yeah, pretty
or
much.
because you're already not allowed to pull a player, you would just not be allowed to pull or push. But I think you brought up a great point. If they got rid of the pushing aspect, you're not allowed to push a player forward, which I think that will get very convoluted when we see the piles when running back running. So that's another
Hmm.
conversation. So this isn't a clean and easy black and white, yes, no fix. But you just talked about the off Jason Kelsey, despite being at the brink of retirement, still the best centers in the league. Two incredible guards, PFF's second rated offensive line, and Jalen Hurts using his strengths. Like Tom Brady, for what it was worth, that dude was really good quarterback sneaks too. He wasn't squatting 600 pounds. He wasn't being pushed from behind. Some quarterbacks just have a better knack for it. And I
Yep.
think what's frustrating is it they just do it more than like they'll do it when it's 3rd and 1, where a lot of teams will still try to run the running back up the middle or, catch them off guard and run outside. No, they need a yard. They'll do it on 2nd and 1. That's what makes the Eagles.
Hmm.
If they need a yard, they're going to the tush push, or I'm sorry, the city of brotherly shove. Like that's the play they're going to. They have it worked. It's not unstoppable. It's pretty much unstoppable. It's only been stopped once or twice, but
It did
that's
actually pretty much get stopped this week, if you remember the Buccaneers. I mean, big, strong interior defensive linemen are successful against it still. I mean, I'm interested to see when they play the Rams how Aaron Donald does against it. Vita Vea actually had success against it this week. There were a couple of times where the Eagles went for a play on 4th and a long 1 yard or 3rd and a long 1 yard and only got 3/4 of a yard. So I think it was stopped once and then they had to do it twice to get a yard another time. Like, it's not completely unstoppable. I think the biggest thing is, yeah, they use it way more than every other team. And because of that and the fact that it's a weird formation that only them primarily use, maybe a couple other teams try it and don't have as much success, that's why it seems like it's, such a big deal.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think we need to ban it. Maybe they look at the alignment of it. Maybe you have to have somebody so far away. Again, that opens up another caveat. What do you do on a QB kneel down? They're all huddled in the same position. Basically, that's what they did. They took the QB kneel play and said, all right, instead of kneeling it, we're going to all push forward. And eventually someone's going to figure it out. It'll come down. And to your point, like if the Eagles are going to be willing to run it, why don't other teams? Why aren't other
There's some
more
teams that aren't going to have success with it because they don't have the personnel to do it. But then that's like when I was going to like the Dolphins run deep crossers all the time because they have track team playing on the outside. Some teams can't do that because their receivers aren't that fast and they can't break through the zone like that. Like, it's just a team playing to its strength.
correct? Now, I will say it wouldn't be the first time a play has been banned in the NFL. Like we've seen plays be taken out a lot more times there because of because of injury related. But it wouldn't be the first time if they think there is an unfair competitive balance. Again, I think it's just using your personnel to the best. And there is a reason I believe that it was on discussion and it got postponed for another year because they don't want to. The NFL doesn't want to have to do anything about this because it would be essentially starting to show favoritism or non-favoritism towards one team. Non-favoritism is the right word. There's probably a better word for that.
Discrimination.
Yes. There you go. My guy coming in clutch.
That took me way too long to think of the word too. I'm not going to take that much credit. All right, I think that's all we really have to discuss from week 3. I'm sure more things will come up in our tangents, but why don't we jump into our week 4 NFL preview? Starting off week 4 with a London game on Disney Plus, playing from Andy's bedroom from Toy Story, the Atlanta Falcons, hosted by the Jacksonville Jaguars in their annual game that they host over in London. And the Jags are favored. I mean, I kind of want to go back and see, like, is this the first time in how many years the Jags were favored in a London game? Because I feel like they've been underdogs for a while now.
Yeah, and they always play good over there. So I think
Yep.
they definitely are they should win, and they need a win after their pretty poor performance last week as well. The Jags are definitely struggling, and I think Tyler talked about it a lot this offseason. As you know, this team barely made it into the playoffs. They had a really big comeback, and they got Kevin Ridley. They have Trevor Lawrence. You're expecting a jump from him, so I understand hype around them. But they're still a very young team. They still are going to have some growing pains. Um, Hopefully, they can start to turn that around. They're in a very winnable division, so they still have a chance to make the playoffs. I'm not discrediting them in week 3. Uh, Zay Jones did not practice as of yet this week, and is it crazy to say like they miss Zay Jones? Like, is he a bigger part of this offense than we realized?
I think you're asking the wrong person because I'm always the one discounting Zay Jones. Like, I just Zay Jones. No one cares. But yeah, no, I think it's true. And it really shouldn't be when you consider that they have Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram. Like they should, and Travis Etienne. Should I keep going? Like there's still how many other weapons. But I mean, maybe Zay Jones in late part of his career is really becoming like a safety net for someone like Trevor Lawrence. And quarterbacks miss that kind of player.
Yeah, and I also wonder too because I remember when I did like preseason recap. Wait, I think the week that you guys were at the beach and I had to fly
Mhm.
for a week. Um, the Jags, like Zay Jones, outsnapped Christian Kirk, the starters, because he was more of the primary boundary receiver. So I think they might be missing him in run blocking as well, like those underrated things that we talk about that don't show up on the stat sheet for wide receivers, but it's a big part of him. So we'll see what they can do with him back. But they're over in London, place they're familiar with. I expect them to get the victory. The Atlanta Falcons are a roller coaster of a team. They look good for a quarter, look bad for 3 quarters. Sometimes that quarter just happens to win them a game. Sometimes they look bad for 4 quarters. But they still have Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. And I want to ask you,
Mhm.
has the split hurt? Like, I feel like you're still playing, definitely Bijan and maybe even Algier. But like, I feel like the split is like really costing them in terms of a fantasy output. I think Bijan only had 10 carries last week. Like, that's not enough for a guy you
Yeah.
spent the eighth pick on.
No, it's not enough for the guy you spent the 8th pick on, and we were worried about that, kind of a split coming in. Like, I think you and I, at least, were acknowledging the fact that Tyler Algier was not gonna be completely phased out and that he probably is gonna get phased out more towards the second half of the year. Like, I think they're still easing in Bijan Robinson. He's a rookie. This is his 4th career game. Not a lot of running backs get thrown to the fire immediately, and it's weird that a lot of them that have fizzled off very fast. The 2 I'm thinking of are Najee Harris and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They were also borderline first round picks in their rookie seasons, and they were basically good for their rookie year, and all of a sudden they fizzled off. So I think the Falcons may be looking at data like that, plus the fact that like running back by committee is even more of a thing now than it was even 2, 3 years ago. Algier's going to still get touches. Obviously, as a fantasy player, I'm hoping that the split goes more to like 70-30 for Bijan Robinson. That hasn't been the case. And like as much as I love Tyler Algier, the kind of volume he's getting right now isn't enough for him to be a consistent fantasy play. You're gonna still see the games like week 1 where he pops in 2 touchdowns and be like, "Why didn't I play Algier this week?" But like he's not a good enough, explosive enough back to turn 10 touches into a normal, like a really good fantasy day, as opposed to like DeAndre Swift last year was still fantasy relevant with 10 touches a game because he's an explosive back. But it is taking away from Bijan too, to where like he is the explosive back to be good enough, but he's gonna throw up an 8 point dud because he's not getting enough carries.
Yeah, and I think Bijan is a potential, and I say potential because of the name recognition and where people drafted him, but he is a potential buy low candidate.
I
If you get him because of his subpar performance. He's yet to have a rushing touchdown. He does have the one receiving touchdown on a Philly play in week 1. But right now, Robinson leads the Falcons in carries with 39 attempts to Algiers 38. So we're talking true 50-50, but he's averaging 5.5 yards per carry to 3.6. So almost 70 more yards in those attempts. So I really think Bijan is a guy that we could start to see break out more and more. Maybe it starts this week. Maybe it doesn't start till week 6. That's why he's a name that you could potentially buy low on, or maybe not even truly buy low, but a guy you might want to target in fantasy wise. But with Desmond Ritter there, are you concerned? I mean, Kyle Pitts is Kyle Pitts at this point. Like the fantasy fans, I don't even like talking about him. But Drake London, he's the guy that's been so up and down. He gets targets, but Desmond Ritter isn't the best thrower of the ball right now. Like, where are you at with him?
I'm playing Drake London only in situations where I have to play Drake London. But there's been a lot of guys coming off the waiver wire at wide receiver these past few weeks that I'm feeling better about playing than Drake London. Tank Dell, I'd rather play him at this point. I'll talk more about him and some of those stats when we get to the Texans game. Um, Adam Thielen. Heck, I'm even getting close on Elijah Moore because of volume. I know Moore hasn't turned anything in yet, but I have a feeling that's coming. Like, he's going to be inconsistent. He's going to have games where he puts in a touchdown and he scores you 17, but I'm only playing him like out of necessity. He's not the worst guy to have on your roster going through bye weeks because the ceiling is there, but the floor is super low.
Yeah, and I think what you talked about too is like he still saw 6 targets last week, but only 2 of those were turned into catches because of the inconsistencies. And inconsistencies, Kyle Pitts should have had a 60-yard touchdown last week, but they weren't able to connect on that. So I did hear some rumblings that the Cowboys might be interested in Kyle Pitts at the trade deadline. So we'll see if they're making a playoff push. That would be a fun name to add, but let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. And we got a lot more games to get to. But this is your PSA that the London game is at 9:30 a.m. When so make sure you set your up Saturday night for if you have any of those guys and take them out of your flex spot.
Good call there, Cody. And after you're done with your appetizer, or I should say brunch of football, we have the 1 o'clock East games. Starting off with a banger of a game here, the Miami Dolphins traveling to the Buffalo Bills. Jalen Waddle has cleared concussion protocol, so the Dolphins are all systems go to score 80 this week. But in all seriousness, um, I think the Dolphins got a gift from the schedule makers to be playing in Buffalo on the 1st of October.
Are you? I think you have a good point there too. That with weather shouldn't play a factor. They get Jalen Waddle back, which is even more mind-boggling that Jalen Waddle wasn't on the field for their 70 burger. But
What's more mind-boggling, that Waddle didn't play in a 70 burger or that 2 different running backs got 4 touchdowns?
yeah, and over 40 fantasy points.
Yeah. One almost got 50.
Or the fact that
One got 50 in some formats.
or the other one, the Dolphins up 70 and come into Buffalo 2.5-point underdogs.
That's another true statement. I mean, and Buffalo has looked better the last 2 weeks, but Buffalo is an inconsistent team. They always have been. That's why they haven't been able to make the push all the way through the playoffs. They could throw up a duck at any point, but like they normally play well in divisional games, but the Dolphins, even when they were bad, have played their divisional teams well. Mostly New England, but they still played Buffalo well as well. So I'm a little, I guess when you look at it, Buffalo got the 3-point home spread and Miami cut into it by half a point. So they're recognizing the fact that Miami is a legit contender in this game, but I could have seen this being a pick 'em.
Yeah, and so Buffalo did win both games last year, but they were both 3-point games. One was 31-34 and one was 29-32.
And
So
the second game was Skylar Thompson. It wasn't even Tua.
you're right,
So there you go.
because that was the playoff game.
Yeah.
So the Dolphins actually won the first matchup uh, by 2 points, 19-21 at the beginning of last year. I forgot they played 3 times. They were one of those teams played 3 times, so I didn't look far enough back. So thank you for correcting me on that one. So last
Yep.
3 matchups, 2, 3, and 3. expect a fun one in the 1 o'clock window.
I don't know why I started off with that. Is there anything else you want to touch on with Buffalo? We only really talked about Miami.
Yeah. So are you? I know he put 40 points. Are you
Yep.
100% starting Devon A. Chain this week?
I am
Are you? You
because
are.
I am mostly because I think this is going to be a shootout. Buffalo's defense isn't like performing quite as well as it has been. Miami is trending to being this year's Lions, where you start everyone on that team and you start a lot of people against them. I mean, even against Denver, like they still gave up 20. I know that was like, absolutely despicable of a game at that point when they still had a 50-point deficit, but like the Broncos have been struggling. They still put up the normal point output. Like I think there's going to be a lot of points. I think there's a chance both running backs score a touchdown and Waddle and Hill will score touchdowns as well. So I'm still cool with rolling with A Chain. His numbers were inflated a bit because he played more in garbage time than Mostert did, but he was actually getting a lot of touches during the competitive part of the game too. So we knew that split wasn't going to stay 80% Mostert for long. But I think it's dwindled down a lot faster than we expected, and both could be relevant at least in the short term.
Yeah. I don't mind playing A Chain this week, but I'm not forcing him in my lineup. They get Waddle back, so that's another person they have to feed. Raheem Mostert has played very, very well. I think he's RB1. He has the
RB1 so far, yep.
most touchdowns on the season. Um, you talked the Buffalo Bills defense is not been as elite as it was, despite the 33-point fantasy put from week 3. Mostly thanks to 9 sacks. So this is gonna be a close game. I think the shootout might be right, but I don't think it's gonna be a high scoring shootout. I think we're talking mid-20s, low 30s back and forth for both teams, and that might not be enough for 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers. So, I guess all the I'm saying is one of those 4 guys is probably gonna have a poor fantasy week this week, and if I had to bet on one, it would be the RB2 over the top 2 wide receivers and the top running back.
That makes sense there. So that'll wrap up that game. And now we have a bunch of 0-3 teams coming up. So still some interesting fantasy players, but the 1 o'clock window kind of dies down from there. Next up is the Minnesota Vikings and future Jets quarterback Kirk Cousins. Yeah, we'll see. Traveling to the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers are dealing with a couple of injuries. They do have Bryce Young back as a full participant, so he may go this week. Miles Sanders, DJ Chark, both limited. Adam Thielen did not practice, but he was just getting a rest day. He should be good to go for this week. Vikings, I think they're pretty much healthy on that side of the ball. I'm going to start with them. And now that we've had a week of Cam Akers in the building, and Alexander Madison actually had a decent week last week, are you still confident with Madison's the primary back, or are you worried if Akers is going to start eating in now that he's had some time in the building?
I'm not. I'm still rolling with Madison. But you have to understand like what my expectations for Madison is like Madison's the running back I start and I'm like, please get a touchdown because you're not going to get me enough fantasy points without it. So like I already have, lower expectations for him. And I just keep going back to like they traded a 6-round pick, a conditional 6-round pick in like the draft in 4 years. Like I think this
You're
is
not wrong.
more of like a flyer than anything. They get to he reunited with his old offensive coordinator, um, and so I think Alexander Madison still gets to be that guy. And I think this was more of we want a person behind him. There might be a week or two where he gets the goal line works, but I think you can still roll with Madison, and I think it should be a pretty good matchup for him this week.
Awesome. And I mean, we still have Justin Jefferson over there as well. Do you want to chime in on the Kirk Cousins to the Jets trade rumors before we move to the Panthers?
Yeah, maybe I should get credit for starting those because I brought those up right after the week 1 loss to the Buccaneers, and I told you about their schedule. And if they lose to the Panthers, uh, they definitely should consider this. There is a lot of reports coming out of Robert Saleh potentially losing the locker room over Zach Wilson's play. Maybe they don't want to. Maybe they just want that top pick so they can get that offensive lineman out of Penn State. or another offensive lineman come back with Aaron Rodgers and a top 10 pick, and possibly a new head coach. We'll have to wait and see on that one because they're definitely struggling right now. But we'll talk about the Jets in a little bit. And it just makes a ton of sense for the Vikings if they lose this week or win this week but lose next week, and right around that deadline they have one win. To trade Kirk Cousins now if they get anything for him because they're most likely letting him walk this offseason. And it might not look like it by the record, but at least in terms of fantasy, I believe Kirk Cousins maybe Tua passed him after this week, but is he still QB1? I don't have the list. He dropped to number
I
2.
believe he's number 2. Yes, I will look it up while you keep going.
Yeah, so he's still he's putting up points. That's what I'm going to say about that. He's thrown it around the yard. Yes, he's had some fumble issues. Yes, he's had some turnovers, but he's putting up points. A lot of that is too. He has Justin Jefferson. He has a great weapon. And speaking of the weapons in Minnesota, hey Minnesota, it's time to stop this. Giving 20% more snaps to KJ Osborne. He's a really good role player, but Jordan Addison has been balling out with his limited opportunities. Let's see what he can do, especially when you're 0-3. As a Packers fan, keep rolling
Amen.
out KJ Osborne. As a fantasy football fan, I don't even think I really have too many shares of Addison in non-dynasty leagues, but he's looked impressive, and I'd like to see more of that.
I agree. I'm lucky that the one league that I'm really I was really potentially relying on Addison. I also ended up drafting Mike Evans late, and Mike Evans has been tearing it up. So I've just been throwing him in there instead, and we'll see if Addison helps me later in the year. I was right with Cousins being 2, but Tua is still 3. He actually didn't play enough last week to break over Kirk Cousins. Number 1 right now is Justin Herbert.
He skyrocketed up after his performance last week.
Yes. So it's 72 points, 70 points, 2 at 67, tied with Jordan Love essentially equally. So
J Love. But that's one matchup of 0-3 teams. One of those is going to get a victory this week. We got another matchup of 0-3 teams: the Denver Broncos and the Chicago Bears. Maybe it wasn't all Nathaniel Hackett there in Denver, but that's a different debate for a different day. Sean Payton. But Bears, they are 3-point underdogs, which feels like it should be a lot more. Jerry Jeudy limited production. There's not too much to talk about this game. So my biggest fantasy question,
Yep.
at least for this matchup, is: are you still rolling with Justin Fields? Is
No.
his big play opportunity? So you're done with the Fields? Are you
I
cutting
won't lie.
Justin
I
Fields?
had a fan interaction on TikTok, and I did say I think Fields is borderline cuttable.
Okay, because I think a lot of people right now are debating: can I cut Justin Fields? And a lot of people will be like, well, yeah, if you cut him, but I'm going to instantly pick him up because you have the
Mhm.
rushing ability.
I
But
so I guess if you're a Fields owner, probably best to hold him through this week. If he has another dud, I've heard rumors there's a chance he doesn't even make it out of the game. They could bench him. So if that happens, definitely cuttable. If he ends up having a good game against the Broncos, maybe there's that hope he comes back. I would still be I'm holding him on my bench. Hopefully you have another quarterback and you're just going to be able to hold on to him until he breaks out or you have a bye week situation. But with all the quarterbacks that have been breaking out, I hope you jumped on the waiver wire and got a Jordan Love and got even a CJ Stroud, or you're still willing to roll with Daniel Jones after that bad week last week. These are all guys I like better than Justin Fields, not even just short term, but long term at this point.
Daniel Jones over Justin Fields. I don't know if I'd do that even this week, but the other ones I can get behind. I think I saw you did some TikToks, start sit over there. So if you need some quicker advice, don't want to listen to an hour long podcast, maybe an hour and a half at the rate we're going on this one. But I saw it and then I was like, he couldn't have said that. And I just swiped. So I apologize. I don't know who the rest of them are, but did I see you say start Russell Wilson?
I did, in fact, say start Russell Wilson because the Bears defense can't stop anything. Their best defensive output so far of the year, they gave up 27 points. And Russell Wilson should be able to put up 18 to 20 fantasy points if the Broncos are scoring 27. So that's my thoughts.
Like, whew. That's a hot take, and we don't even have Tyler here. I think we got to move on because then it could get ugly. It could also be like a 6-3 game at the end of this because both these teams are bad. George just the Broncos more. But next matchup, Baltimore Ravens at the Cleveland Browns. Baltimore, 3-point underdogs. They have OBJ and Rashad Bateman as DNPs. Justice Hill went from DNP to limited, and Gus Bus is a full participant. On the Brown side, Watson, he did injure his throwing shoulder, but he is limited. Expecting him to play. Ford, limited to full participant. Hunt, DNP to limited. That was a mouthful. Let's start with the Browns and that running back competition. They said Ford was still going to be the number one guy. He looked like the number one guy last week. Any concerns with I'm playing Ford this week if I was able to get him or if I spent the fab to get him?
I'll admit when I'm wrong, and I mean, I didn't go super bullish on like the Kareem Hunt's gonna be the guy by the end of this, but like I thought Hunt was going to, be more relevant because I didn't think Ford was gonna be as productive as he was last week. So I'm a little wrong. Ford impressed me last week with how well he played. Probably a full week of practice as a starter helps with that. Um, I'm not giving up on Kareem Hunt potentially taking in some more carries as he, gets worked into the offense a little bit more and gets back to game shape. But I'm totally rolling with Ford. I'm a little worried about the matchup though. Like this is the game that I look at and I'm like, I wouldn't be shocked if it was 9-6. But that's just me.
I mean, you are, and I will say, if you're looking at straight output last week, Pierre Strong Jr. actually had more carries than Kareem Hunt did. Again, that was his first week back, but they were both tied with 3 targets, and we've always seen Kareem Hunt be a little bit more of the pasture catcher. But don't discredit Jerome Ford. He did have a receiving touchdown, still put up 18 points. Had a rough running day, but that was against the Titans, and we've talked about how good their running defense is. On the Ravens side, this is another really good matchup. So, Zay Flowers, he's been looking pretty good to start the season. Obviously, you're still playing Lamar and Mark Andrews. I know Andrews has been a little bit disappointed in terms of draft status, but welcome to fantasy tight ends. But Zay Flowers, he's a guy like Zay Flowers or Tank Dell. Which
I'm
rookie?
probably going Tank Dell at this point. And that's
For,
nothing against Flowers. I really like Tank Dell right now.
dude, I told you Tank Dell when you put Nico Collins in the. So
You did.
I'm taking the victory lap on that one, even if it's a 2-week victory lap. I do not care. I'm with you on that one too. So, and Zay Flowers has been good. I don't think he's like, oh my God, you can't play him. But if there is a guy, if you were able to get him on the waiver wires, uh, wire, or if you spent the fab to get him, what about like Zay Flowers or Puka Nakua? I'm just thinking of like the waiver wire additions.
I mean,
He had
I
the down
think
week last
Puka's
week.
still fine. I think Puka's still fine.
Okay.
I was surprised to see Atwell outscored him, but a lot of it was the touchdown. That's why.
Cool. Well, we can get into those guys in a little bit. Anything else from this Browns Ravens game?
I would just say I'm wary of the Ravens running backs this week because the Browns are number one against fantasy running backs. So, I mean, obviously Gus Edwards is already kind of near the bottom of your RB2 or flex rankings. Trying to avoid him even more this week if I can help it. I think I might have to play him in a double flex league this week, but as a second flex, it's probably the best you're going to find. But don't like the matchup.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too. And I think both these defenses are startable in
Yep.
fantasy as well because Deshaun Watson will turn it over and the Cleveland Browns can get sacks. That's just what Jim Short's defenses do. They eventually learn how to give up the pass, but they can get sacks.
Yes, they do.
So we talked about Tank Dell. We should probably talk about his team, the Houston Texans. They are hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers coming off of a big Sunday night victory in Week 3. Surprisingly, though, I don't know if what this says about the Steelers or what this says about the Texans. The Texans are only 2.5-point underdogs. Maybe it's because just beat the Jags, right? Just
Yeah.
beat the Jags. But CJ Stroud's look. I don't want to take another victory lap too soon. But all offseason, I said CJ Stroud over Bryce Young. So I'm still going to live by that train. Yes, they're not turning the victories, but in terms of throwing the ball around, I'm liking that statement I made early in the offseason.
Yeah, that's one. I was on the Bryce Young train and you were on CJ Stroud. Congratulations. I am
Through week
turning the
3,
corner
it's
on
only
that
week
one.
3.
Turning the corner a little bit. We're gonna leave it at that. But yeah, the Texans offense has been more productive than it has been since back when they had Deshaun Watson still, which is what, 2019? I think that was the last time he played for the Texans.
Dude, just say pre-pandemic, and then it sounds like a lifetime ago.
You're right. So pre-pandemic, this is the best Texans offense we've seen since pre-pandemic. um, but Tank Dell, so I wanted to talk about a little bit about him since I was a little bit wrong on Nico Collins. I think Nico Collins is still going to be startable some weeks. He could end up being a flex through bye weeks. Like it's possible he's still in, wide receiver 30 to 40 by the end of the year. Tank Dell actually has some of the best air yardage target numbers and targets in scoring areas from what I've seen. Like it's really interesting that we weren't talking about him coming into the year as like a rookie to watch, and he kind of broke out super quick. But I think having a rookie quarterback helps, like those young guys getting together and like really working on things in the off season, having the rookie camps that some of the veterans aren't. And like I don't know if the Texans actually do that. Some teams do, sometimes don't. But you can tell that it looks like Tank Dell has a better rapport through 3 weeks than he does, with CJ Stroud than he does with any other receiver.
Yeah, and I don't think it's under. I think there was definitely the size concerns because he's definitely one of the smallest wide receivers in the league. So we'll see it if he can hold up, but if he continues to play the way he has been, and we're starting to see the era of the smaller wide receivers: Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, Tank Dell, Devonta Smith. The list goes on. Um, but don't forget, after the Texans drafted CJ Stroud, he was like, "Go get Tank Dell." Like he wanted him back in the draft process. Like that was his guy. So that could be a budding connection that we see for years to come. In this matchup, though, against the Pittsburgh Steelers, their defense playing lights out. That offensive line is rough. Like I know they've been throwing it out around the yard. I'm just gonna. I'm not saying you can't start them. I'm just saying have your reservations.
I agree. I'm not as worried about Tank Dell as I am worried about CJ Stroud. Like maybe Stroud's a problem because I could see him throw 2, 3 interceptions. That's not going to affect Tank Dell as long as he's still getting his targets. He could still pop in a touchdown. Like that's more of a quarterback issue to me. I don't think he's going to get completely shut out, so I'm not super worried about not playing Dell. But I think overall weapons in the Texans offense, you're limiting it to Dell and Pierce.
Yeah, and I'm not playing Pierce this week either. Not against Pittsburgh. Nope, not doing
Mhm.
that.
I understand that.
All right, I'm gonna do your. I accidentally scrolled down. What matchup are we on? This is.
We're on Colts Rams
Thank you.
actually. So Rams traveling east to the Colts, not quite a West Coast team coming all the way east, but they are playing at 1 o'clock. So does that still count?
No, because it's not a full 3 hours. Only 2.
Yes, it is a full 3 hours. They're playing in the 1 o'clock window. They're just traveling only 2 time zones.
Right, so it's not a full 3 hour time difference. They're in the central time.
Yeah, but they're still playing at 12 Central Time.
Correct. But it's
The
not.
body clock's still telling you it's 8 a.m. or whatever, 9 a.m., I guess.
It would be 10
I don't
a.m.
know.
because it's only
Whatever
2 hours.
number it is. See, this is why I don't do this. I'm
You
trying
do
to
you
egg
podcast
you
don't
on
do
now.
math. It's okay.
All right, so we're not worried about the Rams. And Puka Nakua is a limited participant in practice. I think it's been worth noting too that he broke out in week 1, and he's actually been on the injury report every week since, and he's still performed fairly well. So I mean, imagine if he was back to 100% again. He might be a lot closer this week than he was last week based on the practice performance just Thursday alone. Um, but I think he's still fine to go. And I know Tutu Atwell has been a pretty solid fill-in for some of these teams that are missing Cooper Kupp or just needed a receiver and got someone off the waiver wire. Are you still good with playing Atwell as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think this is a pretty decent positive matchup. Again, these aren't guys that like I'm benching Devontae Adams for. I'm not
No.
benching Jamar Chase. Like I'm not even benching T Higgins for, even though T Higgins has been a disappointment to start the season.
Bricks for hands so far?
But No, I would be okay starting Tutu Atwell as well. I mean, he had 9 targets last week, 8 targets in week 1. So he's definitely been a guy that's been evolved. It's just Puka Nacua broke out and people forgot about him. Uh, so I'm definitely fine with playing both of those guys. I know Kyron Williams had a pretty rough week against the Bengals last week. I think he's a suitable start against the Colts this week as well. Vegas sees this game being pretty close as the Colts are only 1-point underdogs as well. So, I mean, I guess they're giving them the 3-point at home and then they're still expecting to lose. So, but maybe they're thinking the Rams came back to earth too after their week 1 victory against the Seattle Seahawks. But I think the bigger news for this matchup is Anthony Richardson has been practicing this week, I believe, in a full participant capacity, expecting him to clear the final hurdle of concussion protocol and be back this week. And if he's back, I think he's a guy you can start in your lineup.
I agree, and I think he was actually dropped in a couple of leagues. I think maybe only one that I'm in, but the fact that that even happened means if you are a quarterback needy team that's been dealing with the inconsistencies of a Dak Prescott or a Justin Fields, there's an option out there that you can go grab potentially. So take a look and see. But I'm still worried about Richardson's durability in the long term. He played 2 games. He got banged up in the first one and then left the second one. Like, that's concerning. The first 2 games of your career for a guy that puts his body on the line way more than he probably has to.
No, it's definitely concerning too. Um, and now that we have a concussion, and I don't think the first one was diagnosed as a concussion, if I remember correctly. I
Mhm.
think that it was diagnosed as a knee, but he still took a shot uh, there. If I'm remembering correctly, if I'm not, I apologize to everyone out there listening. I can't remember everything off the top of the dome, but uh, that is, if another concussion happens, that could become multiple weeks too. Durability is definitely a question. Not hoping for that. Hope that doesn't happen. Hopefully, he plays the rest of the season, no issues at all. But definitely, maybe something to keep an eye out there if you're going to don't rely on him to be the every week starter rest of season. Maybe have a backup plan ready just in case.
100% there. And I mean, other Colts, you can still roll out Zach Moss if you're somebody that has been or has needed to. I think he's going to be okay in this. I'm still not forcing him in. And then next week we loom over with the what's happening with Jonathan Taylor, but we'll get to that next week. And Michael Pittman's been pretty solid as well, so he's somebody you could throw in your lineups. I think that wraps up Rams Colts, unless you can stop me if you have something else.
Keep it rolling.
Divisional matchup between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New Orleans Saints. Carr did not participate in practice for the Saints. It looks like we might have eaten some W's as Cody's doing that in the video. So maybe you don't want to tune into YouTube, but maybe you actually do to see that. Jameis Winston trying to eat a W against his former team in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Buccaneers are obviously 3-1 after the loss on Monday, are now underdogs despite being against a backup quarterback. Everyone jumped off the bandwagon of the Buccaneers super quick.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Saints team, their defense is pretty good, and I do think Jameis Winston is in the upper echelon of backups. Like he is probably one of the 5 backups in the NFL that if your starter went down, there wouldn't be much of a drop off. And some may say that had something to do with their starter too. Um, but he came in and played pretty well in relief for Derek Carr with a full week of practice, gets the revenge game. And he played really well with them before tearing his ACL as a starter. So I don't mind this. The Saints, the home favorite. I like that. Uh, with that said, there's also the Marshawn Lattimore fights with Mike Evans week if you celebrate. Sorry for whoever's tweet I stole on that one because that was funny.
Our favorite twice a year holiday.
But yeah, in terms of fantasy wise, I don't really like the Saints running backs this week. We know how good the Buccaneers are. So Chris Olave is the only guy on the Saints side that I feel like starting. And then you've talked about Mike Evans. He's been balling out. So I would play him.
No, worth noting Alvin Kamara is back and you're not playing him.
I mean, he is back, but I'm probably not throwing him in my lineup right away.
If you're a team that's desperate at running back, I don't hate throwing him back in because I know some of these guys have been frustrating. Um, I think I'm a little more confident in him jumping right back in than Cody is, and you have to remember it's not from an injury; it's from a suspension. So it's not like is is the injury going to hold up?
No, I think you have, a decent point there, but I'm pulling it up as I'm talking right now. The full Why will this not work? Okay. But he was not great to end last year, was where I was getting at. I was gonna bat full stats and talk about it. So, just because he wasn't, you know, a top guy last year, it's a really good matchup or a really bad matchup for running backs against Vita Vea and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defensive line, those linebackers. I don't think he's a guy that I'm throwing back. I have him in a bunch of leagues because I threw him on the suspended spot.
Mhm.
But this isn't Alvin Kamara from 2, 3 years ago. This is a guy that has started to we're starting to see the end of his running back career, unfortunately, and that's why I don't think it's a must play.
All right, I could see that. And then if he proves you wrong, he'll be right back in your lineup, I'm sure, after that. Buccaneers side of the ball, Evans is a lock in your lineup, even though he's going to be in a fight this week, probably, because he's been very solid. Where you out on Godwin?
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those guys that I'm probably trying to find. Like, I like some of these waiver wire add additions better, maybe than him. But if you're in a pinch, he's shown before that he can put up points. So maybe if they don't throw to Mike Evans, this is his breakout.
Yeah. All right. I guess we can move on then to the Washington Commanders traveling to the Philadelphia Eagles. Potential trap game people have been firing out, but I don't know if that's going to be the case after the Eagles lost to the Commanders at home last year. It's maybe been something that they've thrown the alert on their calendars, like you got to show up for this one this time. Vegas thinks they're going to. They're still 9-point favorites. Devontae Smith did not practice for the Eagles. He has an illness. There was actually a flu going around the Eagles locker room before their Monday night game against the Buccaneers. Jalen Hurts apparently was feeling symptoms. Same with Jason Kelsey. AJ Brown ate too many Takis before the game, so he had an upset stomach too. Um,
I saw that. Love some Takis though.
yeah, right. But so I mean, I think that'll probably be mostly cleared up by the time we get to this game, at least hopefully, unless it's still passing around the locker room. But um, Commanders pretty much at full strength. Logan Thomas was their only major player on the injury report. He went from a limited to a full participant on Thursday. Do you think this is going to be another one of those close games like you would pick Washington against the spread, or do you think the Eagles take care of business this time?
So like the 9 points is tempting because it's divisional,
Mhm.
but I just watched the Buffalo Bills sack Sam Howell and the Commanders 9 times, and I think the Eagles front seven is better than like Jalen Carter's going to feast, Jordan Davis is going to feast, Fletcher Cox is going to feast, Hassan Reddick he's probably going to feast. I think he's out of his cast now, so he might have a big game.
Yep.
Brandon Graham will still get his. Like the list goes on of pass rushing options they have there, and I'm sure I missed some in Georgia's
You
like
missed
Josh Sweat,
Nolan Smith too.
Nolan Smith, like
Josh Sweat. Yeah.
right, like I'm saying. So, and I don't know if the Commanders can come in and run down their throats like they did last time, get some bounce to go their way, some unfortunate turnovers. So, despite the 9 points, I think I'd take the Eagles.
Yeah, because I mean, I think it's going to be one of the two games from last year. The Commanders are going to come out and shock the Eagles a little bit, and maybe they won't win this time, but they would, keep it within a 3-point game or so. Or it's going to be the Eagles Washington game from in Washington last year, where Carson Wentz basically wished he didn't play football anymore because he got sacked about 150 times. I think the number was actually like 8, but that's a lot. And I think I'm also trending more towards it's probably going to be the heavy sack game than the Washington hangs in their game.
Yeah, now we've talked about it. They were definitely better on Monday night against the Buccaneers, but Mike Evans still got his. They've given up pass in yards to the air, so if they can get time, They've given up points, so I don't think like this is a must start Terry McLaurin or a must Terry McLaurin. I'm not saying I would love that matchup. I don't love him or Jahan Dotson, but I think both are McLaurin more so because Dotson has been disappointed for the hype that he
Mhm.
got coming in. But I think he can be played in a pinch if needed. But more, I'm looking at him more as a flex player than a traditional starting wide receiver.
Cody hasn't seen this yet because it hasn't posted yet, but I actually have Terry McLaurin as a sit. Mostly because if you look at it, Evans did get his. Evans got all but 13 yards in one drive, and it was basically garbage time. So like Evans actually did get shut down last week, but thankful for the score to cut it to 2 touchdowns that got Mike Evans up to a decent week. He had 13 yards before it.
Yeah, so that was we got one more 1 o'clock game, and we're almost at an hour, so we got to pick this
Let's
pace
move.
up. Cincinnati Bengals at the Tennessee Titans. Tyler, close your ears. The Tennessee Titans are hot garbage right now. So,
Mhm.
um, Traylon Burks is limited to DNP. DeAndre Hopkins wasn't on the injury report and then showed up with his ankle injury. Derrick Henry was resting. Worth noting that I know it's only 3 games. Only one time has Derrick Henry outsnapped Tajay Spears. So you can already see some of that. They're struggling to score points. Um, now
Only one time out of 3 games the Titans have scored a touchdown.
that too. Now, granted, they get another really good defense this week. The Bengals defense is underrated. The Titans defense is really good. So this could be a really low scoring game. They could get after Joe Burrow. But we've seen the Titans get after Joe Burrow 9 times and still lose in the playoffs. So I would take the Bengals to win this game. I would play your Bengals, maybe not Joe Mixon because we talked about this running back thing, but we're also at the point too, like running backs are hard to find. But there's not a single Titan. Probably you're still playing Derrick Henry, but
Yeah.
there's not a single Titan. I'm not even happy about playing Derrick Henry.
Man, I am praying for snow in Vermont.
I think that's what
Is
it
that
is.
it? Yeah. I'm praying for snow in Vermont just to get Derrick Henry back on the board here. And I still think he might be the only one that's really a consistent every week starter. I think if they get moving, DeAndre Hopkins is probably going to be your next best option. He's not done well enough that I'm playing him unless I'm absolutely desperate as a second flex. Um, I mean, I even did that 2 weeks ago and regretted it and haven't touched him since. But I'm playing Henry because you know the ceiling's there, just like I'm also still going to play Mixon because I know the ceiling's there and because Mixon's actually been the most consistent member of the Bengals offense through 3 weeks. Chase finally had his breakout. Higgins had 1 week. But Mixon has scored more than 10 every single game. So I think Mixon has earned your trust enough to be played against a tough defense. So I'm not super worried about that. And this one I'm going to test you on because people are going to hear this after you already know the answer to the question, basically. Um, Set my lineup. Do I play Burrow, who I benched last week because of the injury, or do I play Jordan Love?
Oh man, I don't want to sound like a homer. And like you said, the people listening to this are too late for any kind of help this way.
Yep.
I'm playing Joe Burrow.
Okay.
The Packers, we didn't talk about this because they're the Thursday night game. David Bakhtiari got placed on the IR. He is still struggling with fluid in his knee from an injury 3 years ago with the ACL. You hate to see that. Their left guard is not playing on Thursday night. Their right tackle might not be playing either. So a lot of injuries up front. Aiden Hutchinson could get after him. So I would play Joe Burrow.
All right. And we'll see how right or wrong that was. And you guys listen, you can laugh. Like, yeah, Jordan Love went for 25. Cody, what the heck? But
I hope
4 o'clock
so.
window to keep
I
this
hope
moving.
I hope I'm wrong. Let's just put that out there too.
Maybe you could be right too, and both of them get 25. That's also a possibility. But anyway, 4 o'clock window opens up with the Las Vegas Raiders and the Los Angeles Chargers. Chargers finally pulling out a win last week, and they might get Austin Eckler back. He is a limited participant in practice. Also worth noting, Mike Williams out for the season with a torn ACL. I don't know why I almost said Mike Evans again. Apparently, I'm still stuck on the Buccaneers. With Mike Williams out with the ACL, I think a lot of people have put the scope back in on Quentin Johnson. Are you like me and you think it's Josh Palmer?
So I think Josh Palmer is if you need a start this week. And Quentin Johnson is the long-term play. So if you're set, if you're one of those, upper echelon teams in fantasy, you started out 2-1, 3-0, congrats. What's that like? But I think Quentin Johnson's the guy to add long term, but I think Josh Palmer is more of a short-term fill.
And I hope you're right because I have a couple shares of Quentin Johnson in dynasty leagues, and I'd like to see that break out sooner rather than later. And I think is Eckler good to put back in your lineup if he plays with how Joshua Kelly's been very inconsistent?
Yeah, 100%. If Eckler plays, he's back in your lineup.
Cool. And then moving to the Raiders side of the ball, Jimmy Garoppolo in concussion protocol went from a DNP to limited on Thursday. Normally, that's a good sign that he's going to go because he has to get, I think, 2 limited participations in and then pass one other thing to get cleared from the concussion protocol. So
Sounds about right.
hopefully we'll see him go. I don't exactly know the things, but I'm just trying to go off of like trends that I'm typically seeing. If a guy goes to limited on Thursday, he typically has a shot to play on Sunday. But anyway, with that being said, number one, I think you're still playing Adams regardless. My question more belongs to Jacoby Myers, who has been an absolute shocker to me. You feel more comfortable with Garoppolo going. Do you play Jacoby Myers in this matchup?
Yeah, I would. And I think it depends which backup quarterback. If they give the rookie a shot, I would play him with that guy. If I think Brian Hoyer is still on that team too, because they just love their Patriots.
Yeah, they do.
I will look that up once I'm done talking just to be 100% sure that I'm accurate on that. But I would play Jacoby Myers in this match. This Chargers defense hasn't been, they've given up points. So I think that you can play both those guys. And hopefully we can finally have a bounce back game from Josh Jacobs.
Hopefully, because we're all waiting on that too. It seems like there's a bazillion different wide receivers that you can go find, and the running backs are like 5 deep.
Correct. Brian Hoyer is currently, according to ESPN, listed as their backup quarterback. So
we'll see how that goes if they do not have Jimmy Garoppolo, but it looks like it's trending towards him being able to go. Make sure you keep an eye on your injury reports to see if I'm wrong there. Second game in the 4 o'clock window is the New England Patriots traveling to the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys pretty much healthy. They did have Pollard and Lamb on their injury report, but it was listed as rest. They should be fine to go. I'm still not confident in Dak in this game. And I don't know if it's because it's Dak and I've been burned before, more like 2 out of 3 weeks so far. But like the Patriots defense is tough against quarterbacks. And then you have a guy who's come in here with only 1 good week so far, and it was still only a 19-point game. What are your thoughts on being able to play Dak?
okay, let me ask you some questions. So I got it pulled up. I'm going to ask you the 2 quarterbacks above Dak and the 2 quarterbacks below him on which one you would rather play than Dak.
Okay.
So 2 quarterbacks currently ranked above him. The first one, Trevor Lawrence for Dak.
Trevor Lawrence against Atlanta?
Yeah.
I might go Trevor Lawrence.
Okay, and then above him is Joshua Dobbs.
It's sad that he's up there, especially because in week 1, he got like 0.6 points or something like that. I would play Dak there.
So you're playing Dak over guys above him. Jimmy G's right behind him.
I'm worried about the injury with that one. If
Pretend
he
they're both healthy for
goes,
this scenario.
pretend they're both healthy. Dak.
All right, so you're playing Dak over him. Justin Fields.
See, is like, but how low is he on the board if Justin Fields and Jimmy Garoppolo are around him? Like, I feel like you're
He's
telling
currently
me
the
guys that
19th
like,
quarterback. That's what I left that out intentionally. That was my
yeah,
next.
okay. So I'm playing Dak there as well, but these are guys that like I wouldn't even consider playing in most circumstances. There's now go up the list and tell me who's on the waiver wire that's still available. That's like quarterback 14, and I'd probably play them.
Quarterback 14 is Mac Jones in this same matchup. So
Okay.
he could probably be played. Brock Purdy
Yep.
is 13.
I like Purdy a lot in this matchup or in
CJ
his
Stroud.
matchup.
CJ Stroud is 12.
I would play Stroud probably.
Watson and Allen, the next 2, they're both taken. Jared Goff, potentially on the waiver wire. He's 9.
Yeah, and I would play Jared Goff. I would have played Jared Goff. We'll see how that would have went.
And then, despite the 0-3 start, Russell Wilson's QB8 on the season so far. So
Russell Wilson's a lock start this week.
all right, so that's
trying to make Cody rile Cody up here.
Yeah,
But
we're gonna move on. I shouldn't even have mentioned his name. I should have pretended it didn't exist. I should have said, and the number 8 spot is John Elway, and just left it to go.
don't need
Brock
another one of
Osweiler,
Tyler's TikToks where he's telling you to play Bryce Harper at running back. But
dude. I know someone that was like, I was really into that, and then it went to 2 other people, and I was like, this doesn't help me at all. Why are you doing that? So some people loved it, some people didn't like it. I loved it.
I loved it as well. But noted. And we're probably going to get more satire out of him at some point. But that's his role. It's satire and hot takes, right?
Yep. We got one more 4 o'clock game.
Yes, we do. And it's a 14-point spread, which might be one of the bigger ones I've ever seen. I might have seen 16 before, but 49ers hosting the Arizona Cardinals. No love for the Cardinals after they beat the Cowboys, but it's probably because the 49ers are still number one on a lot of people's power rankings. Even with Deebo Samuel as a DNP and Brandon Ayuk as a limited participant.
Yes. Now these, when we did the rundown for the show, they didn't have their Thursday out here. I did see a tweet that Debo didn't practice on Thursday either. I do not know the status Ayuk at the time of recording this for his, if he went from limited to full or stayed limited. Um, but I will say, so the nice thing about the 49ers is they have so much talent, and it when it's Samuel, Ayuk, and Kittle, one of them is going to fail in fantasy, and it's hard to predict which one. When one's missing, you can guarantee both guys are going to have good weeks. So if Samuel doesn't go, you can play Ayuk and George Kittle with confidence. You're playing them anyways, but just know there is some confidence behind those starts this week. And I still don't think I'm playing any Arizona Cardinals.
So the other thing, I dropped the ball. I was supposed to have this up and I did not. So I'm going to have to try to guess it. So Christian McCaffrey's on a stretch of, I think, 11 or 12 straight weeks with a touchdown. And if you would have originally put $10 into Christian McCaffrey anytime touchdown at the beginning of that streak and then rolled all of the money into bets every single week, you'd be at like, I think I saw a couple $100,000 just from Christian McCaffrey scoring touchdowns.
Yeah, because I think anytime touchdown, he's still like plus 500 or 600. It's like the lowest odds.
He's in the negatives these days, because it's that common. Like going into last week, he was minus 190.
Oh, so
So
he's now
you're
made the negative.
still, so your $10 would have won you, I think, something like 6 or something like that. That's just a rough estimate. I'm really not as good at this as Kempy
We
is,
need
but
Kempy. It's pretty crazy stat though, and that streak will continue this week.
yes, it definitely will. Because it's funny you're saying like, oh, if you have Samuel Ayuk and Kittle, one of them's going to bust, but you're also leaving out the point that McCaffrey's hitting every single week too. So
Yeah, I was definitely reflecting to the pass catchers. So
yes, he's also a pass catcher too. But all right, hour 8 minutes. We're doing okay here. Sunday Night Football. Kansas City Chiefs traveling to the New York Jets. Big story. Taylor Swift is expected to be in attendance to watch her boyfriend Travis Kelce. I don't know if they're using the term boyfriend, but I'm using it. And this
official.
has made ticket sales for the New York Jets go from selling out all the time when they expected Aaron Rodgers to no love for the Jets to now selling out again on Sunday Night Football as everyone wants to be in the same attendance as Taylor Swift.
Yeah. So just for the record, George called Taylor Swift Travis Kelce's boyfriend. That definitely deserves the alarm going off for that.
Yep, you're right. My bad.
My bad. I was not prepared for that. So I had to have you give your dues. I missed your alarm last week, so I had to give you your dues this week.
Thank you.
She sold out MetLife 2 or 3 times this summer, so she's going to sell it out again. But let's talk about the actual the Kansas City Chiefs and the New York Jets. +9 feels too low. So, or too high, whichever team you're looking at. Too low for the Chiefs, too high for the Chiefs, whatever. Doesn't matter. It should be +14, just like the matchup we talked about before.
Yep. Because Zach Wilson is just not to the level.
And we hinted at the top of the show. You made it this far. Congrats. But Robert Saleh, there's been reports about losing the locker room over his play. I don't know what they're going to do. Like, they signed Trevor Siemian to their practice squad. They have Tim Boyle. Like, they're just stuck. They went all in with Aaron Rodgers, and unfortunately, he got hurt. So now they have to like live with the consequences. And maybe they'll eventually trade for Kirk Cousins, but that's not going to help them this week. And It'll be very interesting to see how long this spiral continues, and unfortunately, primetime game, I don't think it's gonna look good for the Jets. Could the
Mm-mm.
We're not even talking about the Chiefs' defense is playing lights out right now.
Yeah, no, honestly, I don't think I mentioned defenses too much when I was talking fantasy. I added the Chiefs defense last week in anticipation of playing 4 straight weeks. It's the Chiefs defense. You don't do that. Number one,
Right.
they have decent matchups like the Jets. Yeah, I'm playing the Chiefs defense even if I didn't pick them up last week. But number two, they're playing lights out. I think they're eighth in defenses right now or something like that.
Yeah, they don't have, like, the touchdowns and stuff like that that has, led the Bills and the Cowboys to their double-digit points consistently at this point, which is crazy that that's how they started out. But, yeah, they're playing
Yeah.
really good, and I think that continues this week. Play your Chiefs, play your, play Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, Isaiah Pacheco,
Mhm.
maybe even Jerick McKinnon. He always seems to find the end zone. Like, he's like your flyer play. Uh, but, man, yeah, I don't even wanna play Garrett Wilson. You probably are, but I don't want to.
I don't want to either. And I thought I was going out and sounding crazy when I said don't play Garrett Wilson last week. And I almost put him again as a sit this week, but I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna beat up on him this bad. And it's not his fault.
I will
You know
say
who the Jets miss?
who?
QB2 in the 70-point blowout last week, Mike White.
I mean, there is something to say about that team rallied around him last year. So
Yeah.
definitely do miss him. What was I gonna say? You interrupted my train of thought though, so I guess that means we have to move on because I don't remember what I was gonna say.
You're still playing Brees Hall?
No. Oh, that reminds me. I was gonna play
There we
if
go.
you have to start Garrett Wilson, just know he is one of those special players that can take a 3-yard slant 70 yards to the house. So there is still big play potential with him.
And he's
Uh,
done it already this year.
he did it against Dallas. Like that's why he
Yep.
had a good week against Dallas. So he's not the best matchup. Like it's not like a guy slamming the table to play. If I had someone else, I probably would play them. But if you have to play him or you spent too much draft capital to have, you know, you were running back and got him as to be wide receiver one, which probably was a smart idea before Rodgers got hurt. You can keep him in your lineup.
I like it, Cody. One more game on the docket. Monday Night Football. The Seattle Seahawks traveling to the New York Giants. Big news on this one, and it kind of stinks it's coming at this point because it's a Monday night game. Saquon Barkley, limited participant in practice. With that being said, and us really not knowing if he's going to play or to what extent he's going to play, I think I'm sitting him unless I'm somebody who has Matt Breida and Saquon Barkley on the same team, and I'm willing to play Breida. Then I would play Breida until you hear Saquon's active and then switch it out.
Yeah, I think you want to go pick up the backup for sure. That I do think.
And Breida actually, that's a good point about pickup. Breida was dropped in some leagues after last week too, which I was kind of surprised about, but he might be available.
And if he's not, I think you can pick up Gary Brightwell. You might think that's a Madden name. I thought so too until I saw he had the same amount of attempts and the same amount of targets in week 3 with no Saquon against the 49ers. Neither of them did anything with it. But
Because it was against the
I would
49ers.
right. But if you have Saquon, don't have him not be on your bench. But if he can't go, a guy like Gary Brightwell is probably available, and you can at least throw him in so you get a chance at some points.
All right, so bold strategy: Gary Brightwell or Zach Charbonnet.
Zach Charbonnet.
Okay, so you can also go out there and add Charbonnet and have
He's
him sitting there if you don't have Saquon.
not owned in a lot more leagues, but like I'm pretty sure Gary Brightwell is available in 99.9% of leagues.
Probably. There's a Gary Brightwell truther or like
His dad,
himself, his dad that owns him.
right?
Good for him for getting some touches last week, and I hope he gets to get a couple touches this week. But that's us spoken as a Saquon owner who's not going to play Saquon because I don't know his status, and I also have Ken Walker, but there's no way like even if Saquon's active, I'm going to sit Ken Walker for him,
Right. You're going to play both those guys.
and I'm not going to be able to because it's Monday night. So I have to pick one. I'm going to pick the safer option, Ken Walker.
So you would play Ken Walker. Dude, what are your running backs that you have the opportunity to not play Ken Walker and
You look at my team every single week. This is the World Cup that I'm talking in, the league that I put up 160 and I'm coming for everybody. Since Cody also didn't put my rant into my running backs are Raheem Mostert and Ken Walker, and currently my 2 flexes are Tutu Atwell and Adam Thielen. And my wide receivers are AJ Brown and Chris Olave. Not sitting either of them.
Okay.
The thing I would definitely play Saquon over either of those flex options. The problem is I'm not going to go out there and be like, I'm going to go on a limb that Saquon's going to play and sit Tutu Atwell and then have to play Gary Brightwell.
But so let me ask you this. What about I was gonna say, what about like Wandale Robinson, or like in a pinch if you don't get Saquon? Or
Jalen Hyatt would be my favorite, but
Jalen,
that's like a home run hit hope.
I don't know, man. Wandale came back, got his first action, and saw 5 targets.
It's
Jalen
true.
Hyatt didn't see a single target in week 3. So Paris Campbell saw 6. If
People are there's probably a lot of people out here like, why are you even talking about playing these names? And I get it because there's going to be some people that like are basically forced to play Saquon and then have to have the emergency policy. Hopefully, if you're going to play him, you can play him in a flex, and then you have the option to play like a Wandale Robinson and hope or something like that. But I feel like in my case, I have enough solid options so far in the season that I'd rather go safe and hope I can win without Saquon, even if he does go.
Yeah, and we're just giving you names that if you can't. But George, that wraps up the slates. Let's jump right in and get through our survivor picks.
Will you please fix that graphic?
I didn't fix it. I forgot. I just might look for the Easter egg for everyone that makes it the hour and 15 minutes on the Friday episode. So it's
Survivor
picks.
Man, okay.
No, the problem is I don't remember to fix it until I see it again.
It's the problem. Well, it's staying here now. I'm gonna laugh every single week. You guys are gonna be like, George, just stop. Cody and I both got eliminated from Survivor last week, but we're gonna keep this going in case you are in a Survivor. Oh, Cody, you did not. I forgot. You had a comeback, didn't you?
No, you thought I picked the Cowboys to been on the Cardinals train, but no,
Yeah,
I picked Seattle to beat Carolina last week. So I
you're
did
right.
get the victory in our Survivor group league.
Yeah, so I'm the one that's out in that. I am now going to tell you who I think the bold strategy options are if you're trying to save some of these good teams, at least for a bit here. If you're trying to go for the full season jackpot, I'm picking the Broncos this week over the Bears. So the Bears are going to be the team I start picking on instead of the Cardinals. Like Cody was picking on the Cardinals. I'm going to start picking on the Bears.
Not a bad option. Not a bad option. But it's bold, like you said. But if you
Oh,
could
yeah,
get
100%
through,
bold.
if you could get through Survivor with using the Broncos early and saving, a team like the 49ers, you're playing the Cardinals. If you wanted to pick on the Cardinals again, I mean, they have the biggest point spread at plus 14 of the week, so don't mind that one. For me, it's week 4. I'm still alive because our Survivor League runs, it's one and done. I know some Survivor Leagues, you have 3 lives. Some have 2. Ours is one and done. So in our official league, George is out. I've squeaked through, and I've picked a lot of low teams as well to get me there. So I'm taking an easy one this week. I'm picking the Kansas City Chiefs against the New York Jets. Chiefs aren't losing with Teased in the house.
No, they're definitely not. We thought for like maybe a quarter that Taylor Swift was affecting Travis Kelce's play, and then he still broke out in quarters 2 through 4. So he's all good. He's going to catch a touchdown for her again.
Alrighty, so that wraps up Survivor. That wraps up the show. It was a little bit longer than usual. We're sorry we can just talk football forever. It would have went even longer if Tyler's here. But he'll hopefully be back with us next week. Again, reminder, you can check out the Couch GMs podcast feed or the YouTube channel earlier in the week for a recap on the Couch GM World Cup, our 4-year, 30-man and woman fantasy competition. It's a lot of fun. We hope you guys involved in that. Make sure you follow us on social media. George has been putting out the TikToks and updating graphics and information. So a lot of information in our DMs too. We've had some start sit questions. We're happy to help you out there. I am Cody Roadcap. That is George Kerth. I have to the intro music so we can get out of here. Well, not the intro, the outro music to get out of here. But we will see you all next week.